All right, good morning. Thanks for joining us here at Decor. So today we're going to talk about self-discipline. So if you'll bear with me today, my throat, my voice is trying to hang in there, about to lose it. So thanks to Oklahoma weather, so we were just discussing, you get 70s and south winds one day, and tonight you get a thunderstorm and potential severe weather, and then you get snowstorms and north winds and wind chills in the teens tomorrow, and then you get a sunny weekend, and we're just on that roller coaster time of year. So bear with me. We'll pray we'll get through this. Just like the weather, things change. Life changes. Now, at the first of the year, we started talking about goals and objectives and New Year resolutions, and everybody had the momentum going into 2022. And then things change. Things happen. They say half the people drop their goals and resolutions within 3 weeks. So if you made it 3 weeks, congratulations. You're in that 50% quartile. If you only made it 3 minutes, congratulations. At least you were there for 3 minutes. Now, they say by the time we're now in about week 7. And they say at about week 6, you lose over 90% of the people have tossed their goals, objectives, and resolutions to the side. Now, this year, you got hit with a double whammy. You had Super Bowl Sunday, and you had Valentine's Day on Monday. So if you're like me, you've done really good. I gave up eating cheese this year. I had not eaten a single shred of cheese, but on Super Bowl Sunday, I decided I would have some queso. I would have my cheat day. And my bowl of queso became some chocolate on Monday for Valentine's Day. I hadn't had any sugar or chocolate or sweets for almost 7 weeks. But the good news is that's okay. We need reasons to celebrate. If you get tripped up in week 7, you get knocked down every week, that's fine. You get knocked down 7 times, you get up 8, and you keep moving. The key is, in this year's word, we said we were going to express gratitude in all situations. Well, I'm grateful that when it comes to self-discipline is not the end goal in itself. Self-discipline is a process. And perfection is not the goal, it's the process. It's developing the habits. It's changing the mindset. It's back to that example we always use. If I can get 1% better every day, I will be 37 times better by the end of the year. And that's where we're at. So self-discipline is the key. Remember, your comeback is always greater than your setback. You see, no one remembers your setbacks in life. We saw a quarterback for the Bengals, Joe Burrow, who suffered an ACL tear last year. And this year, he came back and led his team to the Super Bowl and was comeback player of the year. We don't remember the injury. We remember the comeback. And you will never be known in life for your setback, because the world doesn't care about your setbacks and it doesn't care what happens to you. But what the world will celebrate is the person that overcomes and the person that succeeds in the comeback. So just like self-discipline and all these goals and objectives that we have, you may have a cheat day, you may have a setback, you may have some circumstance you can't avoid that throws you off course for a day. But that's just fine, because you just keep coming back and you keep coming back, because we're building, we're training, and we're changing our mindsets. So how do you think of self-discipline? Now, some people think of self-discipline as negative or dreadful. It just doesn't sound pleasant. And that's where that mindset has to change, that we are in training. We are warriors. We are developing something positive for the kingdom of Christ. Now, everyone wants to be disciplined, but not everyone wants to put forth the effort. Now, I've never met somebody that wanted to be undisciplined. I've never went to somebody and said, hey, what's your goals for the year? Well, I'd like to gain 40 pounds and become a complete slob by year end. I've never seen somebody write that goal down. You know what I'd really like to do is spend more than I make and bankrupt myself. I think that'd be really cool. I've never heard anybody say, well, I'd like to totally avoid church, never pray, and have zero relationship with God. I'd like to do everything by myself. You typically don't hear those goals and objectives. We all want to be disciplined. But we have to understand that discipline and self-control both come from God. We rely on the Holy Spirit to partner with us and to steward us in the relationships, the resources, and the goals and objectives and the things we want to do not just for ourselves, but for the glory of God's kingdom. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. So if you ever feel timid or scared or afraid to step out there and take action, to do something, to make a difference, but you're just a little bit hesitant, that spirit doesn't come from God. Insecurity and lack of self-esteem and self-confidence is not a spirit that God gives you. That's coming from the other side. God says in His Word, He gives us power, He gives us love, and He gives us self-discipline. So how do we master self-discipline? Let's go back to an old story I shared a couple of years ago about Sam. I shared the story to this group, but it was well before we were going live and broadcasting. So I'll share it again, and this group can just bear with me, and we'll just talk about Sam. Sam was an old coal miner in West Virginia. He was in his late 70s, worked coal mines his whole life, and was just a rough, tough, solo individual. Every day when the noon whistle blew, Sam walked to the church, which was a mile from his job site. His coal mine sat just outside of town, and on the outside of town was a small church. Sam would take that 1 mile trek, walk into the church house, and every day he'd walk in those front doors in his dirty old coal, with coal stains all over him, and the work and the sweat, and the hard physical labor, and his tattered, beat up work clothes. He'd walk into that church house. And the pastor would see him, would stand in the shadows and kind of curious what he was doing. And Sam, with his metal lunchbox in tow, would walk to the front to the altar, would get on his knees, and he'd fold his hands, and he'd say this, "Hey, Jesus, this is Sam, just checking in for the day." And he'd bow his head quietly for a few moments, get up, and begin to walk back to work. And he did this every day. He was self-disciplined. Every day he committed to coming in and saying that simple, short prayer. Well, one day Sam doesn't show up and the pastor notices. He didn't think much about it. It was one day. One day became 2, became 1 week, became 2 weeks. Well, now the pastor's a little concerned. He's kind of starting to miss those Sam. At this point, he doesn't even know Sam's name. So he stands at the doorway of the church one day and he looks up the road, and after a while, after the noon whistle blew, no Sam coming down the road. So the pastor decides, I'm going to the coal mine. I'm going to figure out where's Sam. He takes off down the road, and as he approaches the coal mine, he sees a group of workers out there having their lunch on their lunch break, and he begins to talk to them and describes this man. And they go, oh yeah, that's old Sam. He's worked here since he was old enough to work. He's been here forever. Great guy. Everybody loves him. Hard worker, humble, quiet, super guy. But we hear Sam got sick. Word is Sam's in the hospital in town and probably doesn't have much longer to live. So the pastor immediately makes his way to the town, walks in the hospital and goes to the nurse's desk and asks, do you have an old coal miner named Sam here by chance? And they said, yeah, he's been here for almost 2 weeks now, but he's not doing well, and he's in his final hours. So the pastor goes to Sam's room, and he walks in, and Sam lifts his head and kind of weakly says, hey, pastor, how you doing? And the pastor, almost in tears, says, "Sam, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were sick. I would have been here earlier, and I feel so bad that you've been here and I haven't came to see you." Now, the pastor had asked the nurse, how many visitors had Sam had during these 2 weeks? And she said, no visitors. He said, the pastor said, no family, no loved ones, nothing. She says, not one visitor. He's been totally isolated and by himself for nearly 2 weeks now. So the pastor apologizes to Sam, says, "I'm so sorry I wasn't here to visit because I understand no one's been here and it really breaks my heart." And Sam says, "Well, that's okay, Pastor. That's actually not true. I've had a visitor every day." And the pastor kind of looks at him odd, and Sam says, "Every day I hear the whistle blow at the mine." And shortly thereafter, a man walks in the room, and he sits in that chair right there. And he leans forward, and he looks at me, and he says, "Hey, Sam, this is Jesus, just checking in for the day." And he sits there quietly, and he walks out. And the pastor, was just overwhelmed with emotion. You see, with God's help, we can master our minds and choose what we want most in life over what we want now. And that's the distinction of self-discipline. What do you want most in life? Sam wanted a relationship with Jesus, and that was more important than anything else he was doing. And he made a decision to do something to change his life. You see, decisions you make today tell the stories of tomorrow. If you sit down today and take an inventory of your life, where you're at mentally, physically, spiritually, and take an inventory and jot those things down and put a reminder in your phone. 1 year from now, you want a reminder. Take a personal inventory. When you do that, you'll see that every decision you make over the next 365 days will dictate that answer. That answer a year from now will be a byproduct of every self-discipline decision you make over the course of the next year. Now, today where you sit, that answer is a product, a sum of every decision you've made for your life from the time you were born till now is why you're where you're at today. You are where you are today in your spiritual walk with Christ, in your personal career, because of every decision you made in the past. Now, you may say, well, no, that's not right, because there's some things that happened to me that you don't know about, and they altered the course and the trajectory, and those things affected me. And no, it's not what happened to you in life that counted. It's the decision you made on how to respond to those things that got you to where you are today. Because there are things you can't control and things that will happen to you in life, but you can control and you can decide how you respond to those things. And it's those decisions that you are remembered by, and it's those decisions that brought you to where you are today. Discipline is a decision to change our desires to do what's best versus what is the easiest. Now, Sam had a decision to make in our story. Sam didn't have to walk a mile to pray to that church house every day. Sam could have easily came out of that coal mine, sat right there with those other workers and said the same prayer, and Jesus would have heard him. But Sam made a decision that he wanted to pursue Jesus. He wanted to see Jesus in his house. Sam made a self-disciplined decision. I'm walking to find Jesus in his house and to pursue him. And what happened through all that self-discipline? At his biggest moment of need in that hospital, Jesus could have spoke to Sam from heaven, but Jesus came to where Sam was. He met him where his need was. He met him in that hospital. He paid it back. In Hebrews 12:11, it says, "No discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It is painful. But afterwards there will be peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in his way." Being disciplined is not about being perfect. Albert Einstein's probably considered one of the smartest people in the world. Well, one day he's teaching in front of a classroom, and he takes a piece of chalk and he begins to write on the chalkboard. And he writes 9 times 1 equals 9. 9 times 2 equals 18. 9 times 3 equals 27. And so forth till he gets towards the end, and he writes 9 times 9 equals 81. And he writes 9 times 10 equals 91. And he puts his chalk down. And he turns around to face the class. And the class is all eyeballing each other because they realize Albert Einstein just made a mistake. 9 times 10 is not 91. And they begin to laugh and giggle, and they call him out for it. Hey, professor, you made a mistake there. You screwed up. You messed up. That's the wrong answer. And they all start laughing and ridiculing Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein folds his arm, smiles under his big furry white mustache, nods his head. And after they all settle down, he says, you know, I find it interesting. I just successfully completed 9 mathematical equations, and not one person congratulated me for completing 9 problems successfully. But I made the smallest of mistakes, and everybody ridiculed me. He says, I want this to be a lesson to y'all. Society will do the same thing to you. You can do 9 things perfect, but when you make the one mistake, they're going to come down on you. But I want you to also remember this. The only person that never makes a mistake is the person that does nothing. And how true that is in our lives. Sometimes we're so scared of mistakes, we do nothing. And so we miss 9 successful events because we're afraid of messing up on the 10th. Our Christian life is the same way. You're asked to pray for somebody, or you're asked to pray out loud, but you don't want to because you might bumble your words and say something wrong. So you pass an opportunity for a blessing. Or you're asked to do something for your church, or you're asked to help somebody, but you're so fearful of, well, I don't want to mess up, you just pass and you sit quietly. They ask for volunteers and you keep your hand down because you don't want to make a mistake. But you miss out on 9 potential blessings because you're so afraid of making a mistake on the 10th one. And we do that in our lives. Instead of stepping out there in business and in sales calls and going out there and trying to get, we're so afraid of making a mistake, we do nothing. Well, the only thing about doing nothing is you're going to get nothing. So you got to get out there and swing for it, and you got to go. Self-discipline's like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets, just like exercise. Self-discipline produces a harvest. There's a reward. When you diet and train, you get stronger and you get healthier. When you put together a financial budget and you say no to luxury items and you stay within your budget, you get financial freedom. When you pray and pray and pray, you may mess it up. You may say a wrong name. You may quote a wrong Bible verse. And somebody calls you out on it. That's okay. Keep quoting, keep memorizing, keep going. There are answered prayers at the end of all that discipline. Because remember, you may be the only Bible some people ever read. But don't fear the mistake, because the world is watching all of us as Christians. And they can't wait till we stub our toe and make that one mistake. They can't wait till that pastor or preacher messes up and go, aha, he's a fraud. I told you. He's not a fraud. He's a human being. He made a mistake. And he did 9 things right, and you saw him mess up on number 10. That's all you want to remember. But you got to keep going. You have to remember, self-discipline is not perfection. Self-discipline is a process. And we train ourselves every day to become more and more like Christ. Jesus Christ was perfect. And we know he's the example and the goal. So we strive for excellence to become like him, knowing that because of our sinful human nature, we won't get there, but we'll be so much better off. If you don't even try, you miss out on the 9 problems you get right. So we got to step out there and go. Proverbs 1:7 says, fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. There's probably not a lot of places in the Bible where it's calling people fools, but here's one where fear of the Lord, which is not being scared, it's the respect, it's the awe, it's the reverence, is how it translates in Greek and Hebrew. That's our foundation for true knowledge and understanding of God's plan for our life. And people who despise wisdom and don't want to be disciplined, they're fools because they don't have a game plan. They don't have something to strive for, and they're afraid of making mistakes. So where are you at in your self-discipline? Your health? Are you disciplined? Are you taking care of the body, the temple that God gave you because the Holy Spirit dwells in you? How are you doing at home in your finances and your relationships? Are you self-disciplined, or are you so worried about making mistakes you just ignore it? Where are you at in your career? Are you that young 20-year-old who's putting in the 10, 12 hours a day trying to make an impression, trying to build something, trying to get your career off the ground and get running? Maybe you're in your 40s and 50s and you're starting your own business and you're taking all those valuable experiences and now you're going to go to work for yourself and you're going to try to build something. Maybe you're in your 60s and you're already thinking about retirement. You're kind of semi-retired and you're kind of in that winding down a career and looking to the future, and you're volunteering and how you can mentor others. We're all in a different phase of life. So what self-discipline looks to one group or one generation may be a little different for the next. But it's all about where we're at in life and where we're trying to go and what we're trying to accomplish. I'll give you an example. One more story. There's a guy named Charlie. Charlie was in his late 70s, approaching 80, and he worked at Walmart, and he was a greeter. Walmart has an old-timers policy that they intentionally put older people to front of their stores, and we've all seen them. You walk in, and they greet you. How's your day? And Charlie was really good at this. He was a great greeter. He had a smile. He engaged with people. He would pull a card out, wipe it down for them. He would, on the way out, have a great day. He was the perfect greeter. Charlie had one small problem. Charlie had a hard time being in the station on time. He was always about 5 minutes late every day. But he was the perfect employee, except he was always 5 minutes late. So his manager calls him in and says, "Hey, Charlie, we love what you're doing, man. You're like our best greeter. You engage people. People love you. They always compliment you. I'm always getting feedback to the manager. That guy at the front door, he's wonderful. But you have this deal with punctuality. You know, you meet in the little employee break room. You're having your coffee, and when it's time to go to your shift, you kind of linger and talk to people, and then you stop in sporting goods and you say hi to that guy. And on the way to the front door, you always stop and ask the lady in the pharmacy, how's her day, how's she doing? And by the time you get to your station, you're always a few minutes late. Let's just work on that." He says, "Yes, sir. I understand. I'll work on that." He goes, "Well, good. I'm glad to hear you're a team player and that's something you're willing to work at. You're going to hustle a little harder to make sure you're right there on time." He said, "Well, yes, sir. I apologize and I'll do my best." He goes, "Good." Charlie gets up to leave, and the manager says, "You know, I find it interesting. I understand and heard you're ex-military. The military people are very prompt. There's no excuses for being late. What did they say to you in the military when you were late?" Charlie looked at the floor and he chuckled and he goes, "Well, they usually just said, 'Good morning, General. Can I get you your coffee, sir?'" Sometimes we don't know who we're talking to, and we don't know what their experiences were in life, and we don't know what phase of life you're in. But we judge the book by the cover, and without getting to know the individual and the amount of self-discipline they had went through in life and where they were in that current stage of life. Charlie wasn't there working for money. Charlie was there to engage with people. And if it took him a few extra minutes to get from the break room to his post and he was talking and building relationships, that's what his self-discipline was focused on. So how do you feel about the story you're telling today? Because your story is unique. The true measure of what a person does is when no one else is watching. What do you do when you're by yourself? What do you do when it's dark? What do you do at night? What do you do when no one's watching? Are you the same person you are? If you're on a job by yourself, do you work just as hard as if you're on a job and the boss is sitting there watching you? Or do you act a little different? Do you clean your job site up a little better? When you're out on the road traveling, making your calls, are you hustling as hard as you are? If you're driving around town with the boss making sales call, you are who you are when no one else is watching. And if you don't like where you're at today, what's one thing you can do to change? We watched great athletes perform in the Super Bowl. We're like, wow, they make it look easy. What you didn't see is their alarm going off at 4 o'clock in the morning. You didn't see them running up and down your streets when it's pitch dark outside. You didn't see them unlocking the weight room gym at 6 in the morning and lifting before anybody else even showed up at the office, at the facility. What's one thing you can do? Is it add one verse a day? If you did nothing but add one verse a day to your routine, your life's going to change. Is it a prayer time? I'm going to commit that 5 minutes a day to just spend some quiet time, whether it's in the morning or the evening. Am I just going to go to church once a week? Whatever you decide, understand this, there will be resistance. When you're doing nothing, the devil has nothing to do with you because you're no threat to him. In basketball, you don't guard the guy that can't shoot. He's no threat to you. So you guard everybody else until that guy decides he's going to step up and start playing his role and he's going to pull his own weight. All of a sudden now you become a threat. There will be resistance and you have to keep pushing through it. Mike Tyson, the great heavyweight champion, once said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. They asked him about that the other day with Putin trying to invade Ukraine. And Mike Tyson, they were talking about Putin's plans and what he thought. And he said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And it's so true. We set goals, we set objectives, we got these plans. But the first time we meet that resistance, plans change. That hurt. That hurt. Now I feel some pain. Do I really want that? Ray Lewis said, turn your pain into fuel. However much pain you feel, you turn it into fuel. That pain's an indication of you're getting to where you want to be. And somebody doesn't like it and they're pushing back and you must be doing the right thing. And you have to push through your pain. Because when you push through pain, the reward's on the other side. Proverbs 12:1 says, to learn, you must love discipline. It is stupid to hate correction. I don't know how many times the word stupid shows up in the Bible, but if that's in Proverbs 12:1, to learn, you must love discipline. To grow in your career, to grow in your walk with Christ, you have to become disciplined. And if you hate being corrected, and if you hate people trying to help you and mentor you and share from their experiences and knowledge, it is stupid to hate correction. We all want to be better. So we need to quit being so thin-skinned. We need to buckle down with our discipline and step out there for Christ. He's calling us to do great things. Christ even says, the harvest is great and the workers are few. We're the workers. Let's go out and spread God's love. Let's spread God's word. And hey, if you get 9 out of 10 things correct, congratulations. Keep going. And don't listen to the negatives and don't listen to the pushback of the world, because you are a self-disciplined warrior. And whatever you're trying to accomplish in life, the Holy Spirit will steward you and be with you through the entire process. And if you just need to say a simple prayer like, hey, Jesus, this is me just checking in for the day, get on your knees and check in today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week for next week's message. Thank you.